pounds or something like that. But the really important thing is when you pull it back, it's easy to damage the clutch rod. Now in some of the older models, the clutch rod can be pulled out from the back of the transmission, but on this model it can't. It only comes out. You have to pull the transmission back and then it comes out. The sawhorses I used are very strong and stable, but as you can see, they really get in the way of the transmission and the jack that the transmission sits on, so they make it hard to pull. They make it hard to access the back of the bike and to pull things out. This is a much better setup. The only danger here is that this type of sawhorse can collapse if the legs get bumped. So what I did is I designed something here where I bought this. It's a kit. You cut your own 2x4s, and the advantage is that the top piece can be made as long as you want or as short as you want. You can also cut notches into it so that the frame would actually sit into it and make it more safe and stable. Draining the transmission, I'm getting ready to open it up. I just took the drain plug out, and you can see there's a pretty good amount of buildup of some metal and stuff. Tighten up the grub screw or discover what this play is all about here. One bolt I'm taking out is called the neutral detent screw. Spring in the ball. Little screws which are all the same. This is the longest one, it's the only one that's different. And I marked it as L for long, and it goes right up here. If I hit a little left and right gently, there's a little lip. I put the pry bar under here. This popped up. I'm going to put the bar here, and we're supposed to hear a loud click. This comes free. I have a little shaft that's kind of picked up here. Okay, there it is, the mysterious Grub screw, 5mm Allen socket, or Allen screw. But that was loose. See how I can spin it? As far as the noise, which I hear the rattle, you can hear what the gears sound like. Very similar to the rattle that you get in neutral, especially when the motor's hot. Pull the clutch in, it goes away. Let the clutch out, you hear the rattle. I think that this is probably a little played out, this bearing. Probably should be replaced. About this transmission, you could probably say have no fear. You have to proceed obviously very carefully, keeping everything super clean. You can see how the shifting unit works, something that's always been a mystery to me. If I move the shifter a little here, it moves that thing there one way or the other, and that causes this thing here to rotate. Basically, if the shifter is stiff, like mine's been a little stiff, it could be because it was low on oil, because it was leaking. The shifter slides in here, as we can see that moving like that. Then this thing has to rotate smoothly, and then the gears themselves have to slide smoothly on the shaft. So a lack of smoothness when moving between gears, or a little extra drag. It would have been nice to change the seal, but it's gear oil, not engine oil like most Japanese bikes. So it's probably less inclined to leak. Rotate your gears a little. Make sure it was in neutral first, and then when I played around, I didn't shift any gears, probably important not to. Numerous digital pictures of different angles and things, you know, how everything's at. Okay, that's what the screw looks like when it's tightened all the way. It's only sticking up very slight amount, maybe 1 centimeter. It seems to self-center itself. And take a look at the shaft now. There is virtually no play at all. So I found out it's 4.5mm, or at least that works better than 5. So we'll say probably 4.5mm. And what I'm going to do is take it out. I'm going to clean the whole brake cleaner. I'm going to clean the part itself with brake cleaner. We're looking at the almighty, the technical word for this is grub screw. But if you look in Google, you'll only find, I think, my notice of that. It's what the manual called it anyway. Other people call it a set screw, which is basically what it is. You can see it has a large taper here, much more than I envisioned. It is definitely 5mm. 5mm is a perfect fit. And this is our bugger causing the trouble. So
How do you know it's right? Well, when the shifter is aligned correctly, then you'll see that tapered hole. When you move the shifter into the wrong place, you'll see the hole move. So that lets you line the part up accurately. What I did is I sprayed brake cleaner in those holes at least 3 or 4 times. Each time in between, I used the compressed air. If you don't have compressed air, you could use a can of cleaning air for a computer. Put the straw in it. Make sure you have safety glasses because it'll likely come back at you. What you want to do is blast that thing out. When you get done, you want the part to look like this. I don't know what it shows on the video, but it's bone dry. The thread I discovered after I cleaned it, in the center there is a Torx screw. That very fine Torx is enough so that you can get on there and screw it on directly. Because if you're at the proper angle of the screw, the Allen wrench is going to be right, this pole is going to be right in the way of the Allen wrench, but that little tiny Torx in the center is what will allow you to get it started and get it going, and then you just finish it off with the Allen. Remember, when working with the Loctite Red, the working time is pretty short. I probably fooled around with it for maybe 6 minutes, but getting much beyond that and it'll get so hard you'll be able to move it. The results, of course, now are that when the lever is moved like this, there is virtually no play. The slightest pressure on the lever either way and the assembly moves. Be careful when you take the screw out not to rotate this around, just to prevent possible problems. Also, it's very easy for this to get rotated. So it's going to be very important when you disassemble it to take photos and to make sure that this little gear thing, which you should take pictures of, is properly aligned. If it's not, you're going to run into some problems when you put it back together on the bike and have to do everything all over again, which would be a nightmare. What I discovered is that each one of these I had to push, and when I did, it went down a little bit. So you want to push on each of these things that might have moved before you put the cover back on, although they should get pushed anyway, but just to put them in the proper place. Here, over here on the cover is the sort of cryptic thing which seemed confusing in the book. You're going to knock out that little drift thing. It's a little plug right there. What you're going to do is put a special, you're going to take a, something that's the diameter of the hole, like a bolt. You're going to grind off half of it with your grinder. You could do this in advance. What's going to happen is that's going to keep this something like that, I guess, actually, over there. And we're looking at the race for the input shaft, and this is the input shaft seal. By input, I mean input from the engine. Okay, we're done with our special tool. It's this bolt. I ground it. I believe it's a 1/4 inch. You might want to buy 2 of them or 3 of them just in case you overgrind it. I put the nut on first. I used an ordinary inexpensive angle grinder. The nut lets me go up against here. It lets me control the depth if that's desirable. And really wasn't very hard. Took about 5 minutes to make. Again, you don't have to grind very much off it. And again, it's like a 1/4 inch, what's known as a carriage bolt. You get it at Home Depot or wherever. It was a dry run to see how things go together. It's going to be very important to put grease in all of these parts. Also, I neglected to mention that on the seal for the output shaft bearing, roller bearing, that this is the race, this shiny metal part here, which would have to be knocked out. Although by doing this procedure, making this, you could do your own output shaft seal service. You could just take this to the dealer or to anybody with a shop press. It's probably possible even to do it yourself by heating this part up, taking the race itself, cooling it in the freezer, putting grease on it. You'd probably be able to hammer it right in. Everything's greased up. It's important to make things clean, but it's important not to go crazy with brake cleaner and things like that, because if you dry these things out, you're going to have a heck of a time getting them on, and you're likely to damage something. If you do clean with brake cleaner, what you want to do is spray it on a very clean cloth, then you want to wipe the seal down. And the same thing on this side. You don't need sealant here, just on the inside in this area. Also, I sprayed brake cleaner in each of the holes. I then blew it out with compressed air. I placed a block of wood. I tapped it gently. I placed it here like this. I tapped it. I tapped here. Again, you want to look at the amount of space all the way around. You want to see that it's going down evenly. You don't want to see there's almost no space on one side and still a big gap on the other.